Hey, welcome. My name is Rachel Smith, and this is the Natural Health Rising podcast. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the owner of Natural Health Rising, which is my online holistic functional medicine company where I help people who have autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery symptoms, and a whole host of other imbalances restore their health by natural means. On this podcast, you're going to hear conversations between myself and other health experts on functional medicine and general holistic health. My goal is to provide you with the tools you need in order to help you rise to your healthiest and happiest self. Hey, Tiffany, thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. I would love to jump right in, and I would want to start with hearing a little bit more about your personal story into how you actually got into doing this for your career.
Yeah, so it kind of evolved out of my family's personal need. My husband and I, when we got married, we had a tremendous amount of debt, 6 figures worth of debt. And when we realized we were pregnant with baby number 1, kind of did some number crunching and realized it would be very, very hard to stay at home because we were used to being a 2-income family. And so fast forward, and then there was baby number 2, and now I had 2 kids in diapers. And I was like, okay, we've got to figure out a way to cut our expenses without bringing in more income, because we did find a way to stay home. But I don't know if you have kids or not, but any listeners who do, they can get kind of expensive. Diapers aren't free. So we looked to our budget and figured out where could we cut costs and where couldn't we. And you can't change things like your mortgage and your car payment and maybe you can change them a little bit, but they're pretty static. But your grocery budget, you can change a lot. And so we started playing with some numbers and capped our spending. And lo and behold, we were able to actually meet a grocery budget. And after just kind of sticking with it for some time, we were able to pay off a good chunk of our debt. In that process, I learned how to coupon. I was like a queen of the extreme couponing. I never made it to the TV show, and I'm okay with that, but would spend hours and hours each weekend trying to figure out how to save money. And my husband said to me, babe, do you think we can eat real food? And I'm like, well, what are you talking about, real food? We're like, this is real. It's not imaginary. I'm touching it. And he says, no, like food that grows out of the ground, like carrots and potatoes or apples from trees. And after considering what he had said, he was right. We were eating a lot of food from boxes. I grew up with Campbell's tomato soup, chicken noodle soup from a can, spaghetti night was from a box. And he grew up with food from a huge garden out back. And so making that transition from processed food to real food was not easy. Took us several months to wrap my head around it, and then even longer to implement it when it came to the budget. But I'm not really one to pass up on a challenge. So when he said, do you think you can make it happen and keep our grocery budget the same? I said, you're on. And so I made that my job. His job was to bring money in. My job was to keep the money at home while raising the kids. And we made it work. We figured out how to eat healthy food on a budget. And so fast forward, oh my goodness, 10 years now. And we paid off all of our debts. We're still debt free. We eventually saved up and bought our house, and we paid cash, which feels so good. But to think that it all started with the grocery budget just amazes me. And so I'm here today to show and teach families that you can eat healthy food on a budget, and you don't have to choose between your health and paying your bills. You can have both.
That is such a cool, unique story. I am curious, how big of a change was the budget from start to finish when you first start doing it?
Yeah, surprisingly not that big. So granted, this is several years ago. My kids were toddler age. So our first step was we just capped our spending. We looked at what we had been spending, which was about $400 a month for the 2 of us, because my son was like just months old and he was nursing, so he doesn't count yet. And we said, okay, if this is what we've been spending, then surely we can keep eating at this pace and just be intentional about not spending more. So it was about 400. If you fast forward to when my daughter came and she was about 2, my son was about 4, that's when we really had a good grip on our budget. So for those keeping track, that's about 4 years of a good solid grip on our budget. And we got it down to about $300 a month. Now it's lean. There would be times where dinner was not fancy. It would almost be a little shameful if a neighbor came over and they'd be like, "You're eating what?" But our goal at the time was we needed to save money to pay off our debt. And so now we're in a position where we can fudge it a little bit more. We have more to spend, and that's fine. But from get-go to 4 years was about $100.
Okay. I think I could learn something from you. I'm like sitting here like, wow, I spend way too much money on groceries. So I'm curious, what did you notice, or did you notice any changes in your health when you went from all of the packaged boxed food to when your husband said, "Hey, can we actually eat real food?" And did you notice any health changes there?
Yeah. So in the midst of that, my sold his car and started riding his bike to work. And in that process, he would ride his bike eight miles, I believe, one way. So then another 8 miles home. And at the end of the day, of course, he's hungry. But he noticed a tremendous change in his energy. He wasn't like slogging through the day. He felt good. He had a smoothie for breakfast, healthy lunches, big, healthy, hearty dinners. But there was no complaining about, "Oh, I have to ride my bike," or "I'm so tired from riding my bike. I don't have the energy," which you would think, like, I don't think I can pedal for 16 miles. And I consider myself in decent shape. But his energy went through the roof, and his is probably from the bike riding, but I lost weight. I think I lost 5 to 10 pounds. I mean, of course, over time, but I didn't do anything else. I didn't change my exercise habits or other than what I was eating. I didn't change when I ate or the quantities I ate, because again, my kids were super little. It was, trying to exercise was really hard in there. And, but the weight came off by itself and I had to buy new clothes. So that's kind of a fun little perk.
Yeah. And do you eat now currently any kind of certain way, like gluten-free or any kind of dietary specifics, or is it still just whole foods and that's how you do it?
So my husband has encountered some health challenges since we first switched over to eating real food. So he is following more of a higher fat, lower carb diet right now. My daughter is sensitive to gluten. It's not an official allergy, but it causes her to have migraines. There's a direct correlation. We have realized that. So generally speaking, as a house, we're a gluten-free house. My husband will intentionally eat more fat, but other than that, we're still very much whole foods. We try to buy the best quality we can afford. And sometimes that's organic and sometimes it's not. We try to place a really high emphasis on just the whole food groups. We don't try to eliminate any, especially if my son and I can tolerate, grains, and my daughter can too, just as long as they're gluten-free, then we'll include them as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any specifics for determining whether or not you're going to buy organic or non-organic?
So when you are trying to save money, there's a few different guidelines that you have to balance at the same time. The first one is the budget. Budget is king. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. Like you can't just magically go pluck money from the trees. It does not exist. So you buy what you can within that pot of money that you have. The second one would be, if you're going to go the produce route, or I should say, speaking of produce, is the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. I know it's super popular and it's probably because it's legit. If you shop according to get organic from the Dirty Dozen, go conventional from the Clean 15, you can most of the time come out ahead. And still, of course, you want to wash your produce. Eating seasonally and locally helps a lot. And a lot of people think you have to go to the farmer's market to do that. And as much as I love the farmer's market, it's not always within my budget. But if you pay attention to what's at the grocery stores, for example, I live in Georgia, and if you go to the grocery store, it'll often say, hi, I'm local, I'm grown in Georgia. And it'll be peaches or, I was gonna say avocados, but I know they're not from Georgia. It'll be some other just fruits and vegetables, corn that's grown locally. And that does work within my budget. And then also, generally speaking, we prioritize animal products for better quality over non-animal products. So if I have a choice between organic chicken versus organic beans, I'm going to go with the organic chicken, and I'm going to go with conventional beans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, explain that a little bit further as to your reasoning of why for the listeners. I think that's really important too, like prioritizing the animal product quality over some other things.
Yeah, so animal products, the icky stuff that animals secrete, like the toxins and chemicals, it's stored in their fat. And it's the same way for humans. That's just where the gross stuff goes. So if you're going to eat an animal product, you want to make sure that you're eating what they're eating. And so you want to make sure that whatever they are eating is as clean as possible. If they're grain fed, sometimes those grains can be GMO, which has a lot of just toxins, and hormones can be added, and growth hormones to make chickens bigger, to make milk more plentiful from cows, to cows, just like soy. Soy is huge in animal feed, and soy is like 99% genetically modified. So when it comes to animal products, if you lean towards the natural organic route, you will tend to fare better than if you don't. But I do want to say that eating good food on a budget isn't an all or nothing. It's not that everything has to always be organic. Or even, we can even say your meat doesn't always have to be organic. Would I like it to be? Yes. Is it better? Yes. But again, budget is king. So if you don't have the money, maybe you've got birthday celebrations or holidays are coming up, or an anniversary, or lots of company, maybe you're hosting family. That's going to eat up your budget naturally, because you're feeding more people. It's the same thing if you have teenagers. They eat a whole lot more than the toddler ever will. And I can attest to that now that I have teenagers. And so therefore, sometimes you have to make compromises in the budget, but an apple, whether it's organic or conventional, will always be better than a bag of Doritos. So when I get wrapped around, oh my gosh, I'm either using bacon fat, but my bacon was from a conventional pig. So is my bacon grease good to use? Is it not good to use? What about the nitrates and all those things? When I start to find myself going down a rabbit hole of, well, what about this? And what about that? That's where you just take a step back and say, okay, look, this is better than Doritos. This is better than the Oreos or the Hot Pockets or the Pop-Tarts, the myriad of junk food that lives in the middle of the grocery store. This is umpteen times better than that. And so even if I'm choosing a conventional pig right now and it is not nitrate-free bacon, it is still better than what I used to do. So baby steps, all about baby steps. And as long as they're going in the right direction, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I talk to people all the time and they're so confused. They're like, well, what about keto? And what about vegan? And what about this? And they just get so wrapped up in the convoluted information on the internet. There's just way too much there. And they stress about that instead of, hey, let's just go back to the basics. Yeah. Try and stay away from processed foods and maybe like inflammatory seed oils. But besides that, like just focus on whole foods for now until, like you said, baby steps until we can get to a different place.
Yes.
So I want to know a little bit more about some of the things that you offer people. So like looking at your website, you've got DIY natural living, recipes, all sorts of things on there. So tell our listeners more about what you exactly do and the services that you offer.
Sure. So my blog is don'twastethecrumbs.com. I've been there for, oh my gosh, coming up on 10 years. There's not quite a million, but it feels like a million posts there. And like you mentioned, I've got recipes, and every recipe is tested 3 times by my myriad of picky eaters. So if you're going to try one of my recipes, my goal is for it to be a winner in your home. I also share meal plans as well as meal planning tips and tricks, because it's different when you are making your own meal plan versus following someone else's. And then it's even different after you make it, because sometimes you're like, well, I don't really want to eat today what I thought I would want to eat when I made it last Monday. We change your mind. So just how to stay on track, how to get back on track if you fall off. And then there's also shopping strategies and hacks, like how to get the most out of Walmart grocery pickup, how to get the most if you are going to shop at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, because contrary to popular belief, you can get real food at any grocery store. The name of the store doesn't mean everything inside is healthy. Just like you can find healthy food at Walmart, you can find plenty of junk food at Whole Foods. So I have lots of shopping hacks there on the site. And then if you need more hand holding, I have a course called Grocery Budget Bootcamp that I love to run. I do it twice a year because I do it live. So I'm trying to balance, the work with the family, but we do it once in the spring and once in the fall. And that is where I am literally holding your hand from the very beginning. Like, we're making decisions like, what do you want to eat? It's not my job to tell you what to eat. That's the practitioner's job. Or if you're not under a healthcare professional's guidance, then that's up to you to decide, what do you want to eat? Once we figure that out, I'm going to show you how to get the best deal possible from those items. And then we talk about food waste. We talk about meal planning, how to do it the right way. We talk about grocery shopping. We talk about cooking from scratch. And we talk about keeping ourselves organized in the kitchen, because I don't know about you, but I'm totally guilty of this, but I'll go shopping and be like, oh, there's a sale on peanut butter. We love peanut butter, and I think we're almost out. So let me get a couple jars. And I come home and put it away, and lo and behold, there's like 6 jars of peanut butter in my pantry. And
Yep.
We didn't need peanut butter. So keeping ourselves organized so that we're spending money when we need to, and we're saving it wherever we can. And then taking these steps and turning it into a system that works for you, and it works for any size family, whether it's a family of 1, a family of 12. It works in any country. I've had students from 20 different countries and counting, like Russia, Yugoslavia, England, Australia, all kinds of countries. And it works no matter what your diet is, because as I mentioned, I don't tell you what to eat. I'm just teaching you how to get the best deal possible from that. So that's my course, Grocery Budget Bootcamp.
Okay. That sounds amazing. That is so much information, what to eat, how to get the deals up from A to Z, right?
It is. Yeah. It's kind of like learning from a fire hose.
Okay.
Saying, you can do this. Hang on, wait, there's a little bit more coming. We can do this together.
Yeah. Yeah. People definitely need their hand held through a lot of that stuff. But what about someone who is trying to do this on their own and they feel overwhelmed and they're just trying to figure out, okay, how do I even start eating healthy or meal planning or cooking? Like, what are some tips to overcome that overwhelm and where to start?
Yeah. So let me give just a few tips off the top of my head here. The first one would be to start with what you already have. So one of the statistics I teach in my course is the average American family throws away up to 40% of the food they buy.
Wow.
And yes, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of food. And when we think about that, we tend to think, oh, that's like leftovers, scraping the plate. Or there's a meme on Instagram that's like, oh yeah, that spinach I bought last week that's moldy in the back is, waving their hands. It's time for me to go throw it away. But that's legit food waste. And as food costs go up, we have to be super conscious about what we're doing with the food we have already purchased. If we can eat more of what we already have, then we can spend less at the store. So that's tip number 1, eat what you already have. And just to toss in there, for anyone who thinks you don't have food, I assure you that you do. My husband and I, several years ago, were getting ready to go to a church potluck. And I opened the pantry and I was like, oh my gosh, we have nothing to eat, which I'm sure I'm not alone. Someone else has done that too. And it was like this wave of thought came over me. It was like, Tiff, you have plenty to eat. Open your eyes to what you actually have. And my husband and I challenged ourselves to go 1 week without spending money at the grocery store. And that 1 week turned into 33 days. 33 days without spending money at the grocery store. So I assure you, you can go longer than you think by eating the food you already have. Tip number 2 would be to make a meal plan. Now, I know this is daunting to a lot of people. They think it has to be super complicated and really, really hard, but it's not. Meal plan is a fancy term, or even just a plain term for writing down what you're going to eat. That's all it is. It takes maybe 5 minutes. Even if you know that dinner tonight is going to be spaghetti and meatballs, then you write down spaghetti and meatballs. It just takes some of the stress out of when you're standing in front of the fridge and you're like, I don't know what to make for dinner. And the kids or the husband's like, 4 o'clock, hey, what's for dinner, honey? And you're like, I don't know. And so you're stressed, you're anxious. And a lot of times that causes us to make poor choices and we lean towards takeout. Let me call Domino's. Let's order Chipotle. Let's go through drive. Can you pick something up on your way home? It's $5 Fridays for the fried chicken. Decisions like that. So if we can just write down what you're going to eat, no matter how simple it is, just that right there will eliminate so much stress. And you don't have to do it for a week, just like the next 2 or 3 days. Just simply write it down. And then 2 more tips for you. When you're shopping, pay attention to prices. Now, I'm not asking you to go to 25 different stores. I'm not saying to spend all day shopping. I'm just saying pay attention. Pay attention to different brands, to different size packages. Look to see where your store is putting things. I know my local grocery store that I like to go to is Kroger, and they have 2 different sections for milk. Like plant-based milk is in one spot and animal milk is in another. They have 2 different sections for cheeses. They have 2 different sections for breads. And if you don't, even in the produce section, there's 2 different sections for avocados. If you want single ones, they're in one spot. If you want bagged, they're in another spot. But if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't know that. And so just pay attention, open your eyes, learn your local grocery store so that when something comes up that appears to be a good deal, you're like, oh, wait, I know that there's carrots over here too. So let me go look at the carrots. Or don't just assume that because you see the sales sticker, it's actually a sale, because you've been paying attention to what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. Then finally, anytime it comes to spending money on groceries, especially, ask yourself, what if my budget was 0? A lot of times we start with, my budget is $300, $400, $800, whatever it might be. One of my students had a grocery budget of $1,800. That's fine. If you have the money, then so be it. But what if your budget was 0? Would you still put that item in your cart? So to really dial back your spending, your impulse purchases, the let me put it in the cart just in case, or the, hey, yeah, that sounds good. I saw a recipe in a magazine that used that random ingredient, like, I don't know, chia seeds. And so I'm going to get chia seeds. And this bag is such a great deal because it's the biggest bag. Well, I'm sure you know, Rachel, that chia seeds a little bit goes a long way. I've never come across a recipe that uses more than maybe a tablespoon or 2
Right.
at a time. And so now you have this big old bag of chia seeds that you thought was a good deal that you don't know what to do with. And it very well might turn out that you don't even like chia seeds, which I don't. So what if your budget was 0? Would you have actually bought those chia seeds, or would you have said, maybe my money would be better spent elsewhere, like on some better chicken, or on this block of cheese, or on this produce instead?
That's really great. I love that. What if my budget was 0?
Thanks.
So I have another question about people who seem to struggle kind of getting into shopping and cooking and all of that. I hear this all of the time from my clients and from other women, and they say, and these people are struggling with health issues, and they know that they need to be buying whole foods and cooking and all of that, but they say, I don't have the time to cook, or I don't have the time to prepare meals or go shopping. What do you have to say to those people?
Yeah. So the lack of time is a legit thing. We as humans, I feel like our schedules just get, or maybe it's not even humans, probably us as Americans, the more news I read, we tend to jam pack our schedules. So I would suggest to those folks to keep your meal plan simple, 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 simple. I am talking about building your plate around produce, protein, and a healthy fat. Don't, as tempting as it is to flip through magazines and scroll through Pinterest to find those amazing looking recipes, if you are struggling with time, you're not in that realm. You are in, I don't like to call it survival mode, but you're kind of sort of are. You're in the mode, just get food on the table to get the food in the bellies. That's your current status. So keep your meals really simple. I would also say use your appliances. Use the Instant Pot, use your crock pot, use your blender, whether it's a traditional blender or an immersion blender, put it to use. You can cook a lot of staple ingredients while you're not even home. You can put 2 chickens in a crock pot, cook it while you're sleeping. You can then pull those out in the morning, just set them aside. You can put beans then in the crock pot while you go to work. And then when you come home, you can easily steam vegetables. Now, I'm not a huge fan of steaming frozen vegetables in the bag. That's a personal thing. But I also know that if you are in survival mode, again, steamed broccoli from a bag is going to be better than the Hot Pockets or the frozen tortilla pizza rolls or whatever else fun stuff you can think of. So go that route if you have to, open a bag of peas, open a bag of broccoli, shred that chicken, and you got the beans, or you've got rice. Just keep them simple. You can then use fun sauces to spice it up a little bit. Like I actually just saw some plant-based sauces at Kroger the other day. It was like a nacho cheese one, and there's buffalo one. And of course, you can make these yourself on the weekends if you have more time. But when you do cook, you're going to want to cook a lot. So you have leftovers. You're going to want to employ your kitchen appliances to do a lot of the work for you, and then keep your expectations realistic and keep your meals really simple. And that alone will create a snowball effect. When you start cooking extra and it's doing the work for you, all of a sudden it's time for dinner and you have breathing room. You're not stressed at the last minute of what do I need to cook. You can give attention to kids' homework. You have time to take that bath before you go to bed. And you're putting good food on the table at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to ask about meal prepping. So it sounds like you do encourage to meal prep. Do you tell people to cook for the whole week or to cook for a few days? What's your strategy there?
So my strategy is, if you're going to meal prep, to prep the things you're going to eat, whether that's this week or the week after or the week after or the week after. I know personally that if I were to meal prep the whole week, I don't think I have enough containers to do that. I don't know if I have enough fridge space to do that. And then I don't like when Wednesday or Thursday comes and I'm like, oh, I've been eating the same thing all week. I am so tired of chicken. I don't like that. So if I'm going to meal prep, I'm going to prep things I know I will eat at some point in time. And that some point in time is the somewhat near future. So for example, if you open my freezer, you're going to find home cooked beans are in there. I've got rice. I have chicken stock. I have cooked ground beef. I have cooked shredded chicken. I have sauces. I have marinades. I have all kinds of staple foods that when I'm in a pinch for time, I can pull out and turn into a meal rather than single serving of things just from the fridge for that 1 week. I think for some families that does work, but that is harder to implement, in my opinion, when it's greater than a family of 1 or 2. If it was just my husband and I, we would probably suck it up and just eat the whole thing or eat the same thing all week. But with the kids, I don't really want to hear them complain about eating the same thing over and over and over again. So we'll, if I make muffins, I make a lot of muffins and I put them in the freezer for later. Make pancakes, I make a lot of pancakes and I put them in the freezer for later. And then I we rotate through the freezer so that I get to reap the benefits of my extra cooking, but they're not eating the same thing every day for weeks on end.
Okay. So utilize freezer space. Um,
Yes.
and I have to agree too. So my clients, they struggle with, they're fatigued and they have brain fog and they can't get out of bed in the morning and they're going to bed too late and all of these things. But once I get them to actually do a little bit of meal prepping, just preparing just a little bit, maybe even if it's just a few days, or at least batch prepping the protein or the sides or whatever it is that they need, it's like their whole life changes. They're like, oh wow, like you said, I have time to take a nice hot bath in the evening or spend time with my family. And then their energy increases because they get better sleep and then they don't have to stress about cooking. And it's just this amazing trickle down effect that happens just by being more prepared and then actually cooking whole foods and taking care of yourself.
Yes, absolutely. In practice in our house, because I mentioned I don't like to cook on Sunday for the whole week. But when I do cook, I will intentionally cook a little extra for future meals. For example, last night we had grilled chicken, we had potato wedges, frozen peas, not above using a bag of frozen peas, and roasted Brussels sprouts. Well, when you put even just one extra vegetable or side dish on your table, by default, your whole family is not going to eat all the food. There's going to be more extra because you made more in the first place. So for today, for lunches, we've already had lunch in my house and we finished off the Brussels sprouts. There's still some peas left. There's still some chicken. There's still some potatoes. So now I've got 3 more ingredients that will carry over for either tonight's dinner or tomorrow's lunch, just from making a little bit extra in that one meal. So meal prep can look like that too. Instead of batching the whole week, just a little bit of extra when you are already cooking.
Do you have any other like top shopping or budgeting hacks that you want to share? Because I know we talked briefly about writing down the meal plan, paying attention to prices, and then asking that question, like, what if my budget was 0? Do you have any other high level ones that you'd like to share?
Sure. Right off the top of my head, I'm thinking about one of the big tips. Like if you were to go to Google and you see how to save money on groceries, people are going to say to cook from scratch. I'm going to argue with that just a smidgen, because while I'm a huge advocate for cooking from scratch, because you eliminate all the gross stuff that's in your food, I don't think you should cook everything from scratch because it doesn't always make sense. Namely, if you don't eat it very often, you probably shouldn't make it from scratch. I had a friend who, I don't know why, but they didn't eat chips and salsa. I feel bad for them because we love chips and salsa in my family. But for her, because they did not eat salsa very often, she did not make it. If by chance it called for a recipe, she bought a jar. Where in my family, chips and salsa are a staple. And so we're making salsa all the time. Same thing can be said for bread. If you don't eat bread, it does not make sense for you to learn the skill of making homemade bread because you don't eat it. But if you do eat it, you can invest your time, learn that skill, and come out paying like 25 to 50 cents for a good, healthy loaf, whether it's sourdough or it's whole grain or it's soaked or sprouted or whatever it is. 50 cents versus, oh my gosh, bread nowadays is like $5 to $6 for an artisan loaf. It's insane. So cook from scratch when it counts. That would be one right off the top of my head. Also, when you bring food home from the grocery store, have a plan B. Often we'll go shopping with our list and we say, okay, I need, I need all these things. And then we get home and for whatever reason it might be, we just don't make the meal that we bought that ingredient for. So like say mushrooms, maybe we were going to make beef stroganoff and I don't know, I didn't feel like cooking one night and I said, let's go to Chipotle. So we went to Chipotle and we did not make beef stroganoff. But now I have this package of mushrooms that I've paid money for that are sitting in my fridge that I need to come up with something to do with. So I highly encourage having a plan B. And this takes a little bit of practice. It takes some time. because you have to probably use the internet to look up what to use with extra mushrooms, right? And then see, of these things, what makes sense for my family, what makes sense for my time, what would we actually eat? But that thought is also a good one to keep in mind when you are shopping as well, because if you are planning on making a meal such as beef stroganoff, but you know there's a chance that you may not make it. Maybe that's Friday's meal. You're shopping on Sundays. Later in the week, you may change your mind between now and then. To have a plan B in mind when you're shopping is super helpful, because then when the day comes, it turns out you don't make that dinner, you're not stuck with, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with these mushrooms? You would already have the thought of, okay, well, if I run out, I'll use them in a salad. I'll put them in a soup. I'll make my own cream of mushroom soup, and I'll make a pot roast. I'll do something else.
Mm-hmm.
So having a plan B with what you buy. I also recommend having a plan B meal plan. That I actually should call this an emergency meal plan. And this is the meal that you make when you absolutely have no clue what to make. Your brain juices are zero. You know, you've had like parent teacher conferences, you spent all week at work, you are physically, mentally, emotionally drained and exhausted. This is the meal you turn to that is, again, going back to that survival mode concept a little bit, you're putting food in bellies. This would be the box of whole grain pasta, if you can tolerate it, and if your practitioner recommends it. This would be a very simple spaghetti sauce. And I'm talking like a can of peeled tomatoes, salt, pepper, and oregano. Like that is, that's how, and garlic, forget the garlic. A simple sauce and a lean protein to go with it with something green. Like really pull out that bag of peas, pull out that bag of broccoli, pull out that ground turkey and make a few meatballs to go with it. Just keeping it super simple. Having 2 or 3 of those types of meals pinned to your fridge is such a lifesaver when you don't have the energy to make decisions or just to do anything. And then when you know what it is, you can enlist your family too. You can say, all right, you, even when they're really, really little, it's like, little one, get the pot. I'm going to put, get the pot out for me, turn the sink on. When it's halfway full, turn the water off. Worst case scenario, they overfill the pot, but it's in the sink, right? Water's going to go down the drain, all is well. Parents can handle the stuff on the stove. Little ones can get their fingers messy, mashing up the meat. And I think when we reframe dinner from being a chore into almost a family activity, that can take the stress out too. But you as the parent, as the caregiver, by eliminating the choice and the decision of, well, what am I going to make in the first place, makes it exponentially easier to just move forward with mealtime than it would otherwise.
Wow, I think that's going to help so many people because, yeah, people definitely, a lot of women, busy ladies, think it's a chore. They don't get enough help. And so the simplicity of emergency plan, put it on the fridge, get help from the family and make it fun, make it engaging. I think that is wonderful.
Yeah. And your kids won't come to you and be like, Mom, when's dinner ready? When's dinner ready? Because they're with you,
Right.
And if they ask when's dinner can be ready, you can say, well, as soon as you're done mixing the meatballs, the dinner is ready. It brings them into it. They feel more included and a part of it rather than you just doing things all the time and then taking for granted the work that you do.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. So I think this is a good note to end on, but I always like to ask if you could leave our listeners with one action that they could take this week to help them live a healthier, happier life, what would that be?
Oh, just one.
Maybe you can group 2 together, but
I
try for one.
I might have to group for 2. So 1A is to get the junk out of the house. Like that is so important. The longer I'm on this real food journey, the more I realize that if the junky stuff is in front of me, I'm going to want the junky stuff. But I know that I don't feel good with the junky stuff. I know it has this huge downward spiral. We talked at the beginning about if they eat well, they feel better and then they have more energy and they're taking care of themselves. Well, the opposite is true too. you don't eat well, you don't sleep well, and then you're tired and you're sluggish. So get rid of the junky stuff. Just give it to a neighbor and say, I love you. Here you go. And just walk away. And then the second one would be, I would challenge you to postpone grocery shopping by one day. And the concept going back to eating what you have. So if you were going to go to the store today, say, I'm not going to go, I'm going to go tomorrow. When tomorrow comes, can you postpone it one more day? Can you postpone it one more day after that? And know that the meals might be looking kind of crazy, but by the end of the week, you gain so much more. Not only are you gaining money because you're not spending it, but you gain insight into what you like to eat, what you don't like to eat, what you should buy, what you shouldn't buy. And I think there's some character development too of perseverance and like willpower and having a goal and sticking to it. Because I will tell you that eating real food on a budget does not happen overnight. It took us 4 years to really get a good grip on it. And here we are 10 years into the journey and I'm still learning. So if you think it's going to be all under wraps and you're going to know exactly what to do in a handful of days, that's going to be a hard awakening because you need to be in it for the long haul. So if you can postpone your shopping by one day here and another day and another day, it will give you the reward that you can indeed stick to this and that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And then you go shopping and you feel good. You're like, oh, I did it. You know, my fridge is like literally empty and it feels so good.
Yeah, I'm actually going to do that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm challenging myself. So if anybody wants to join me who's listening, I'm going to go to bare bones. I'm going to try it. Just not buy anything until you go through it all and you're like, okay, now I literally don't have food in my fridge and I have to go. I think that's going to be a cool experiment. And you know what? I'm sorry, I have one more quick question because I feel like this could be vital to the whole budget saving aspect. Is how do you know how much money you're supposed to spend on groceries? Is there a certain percentage of income someone should spend on their groceries?
So we talk about this extensively inside the course because there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. There is a mantra of $100 per person per month. There's a mantra of a certain percentage of your income should go to food. And then there's the way that I started of, well, what have you been spending already? And let's just start there. So inside the course, we have a whole lesson dedicated to that. So it kind of works like, you know, when you go to the mall or even Walmart nowadays, you put a penny in, it goes around and around and around and around, and around, and then drops in the center. It's like a funnel. So we approach it from a funnel perspective and we give all this information on, let's talk about it. Let's wrap our head around potentially how much money you should be spending, because there are factors to consider, like where you live. If you live in the middle of nowhere or you live in a big city, your food prices are going to be higher. If you have legit food allergies or you're on a very restricted diet, your food bill is going to need to be greater than someone who doesn't. And if you need to eat organic, I have a very good friend who's allergic to a lot of the pesticides that are sprayed on organic produce. So she has to eat organic. Then your costs are going to be higher. So we walk through that and take it all into consideration. And then we come up with a number. And so I would encourage your listeners to either start with what they've already been spending and cap it, or estimate the $100 per person per month, whichever is least intrusive. Because if you start with a very restrictive budget, you are potentially setting yourself up for failure. And we don't want that. We want to start the easy route. We can always shave more off, but we don't want to add more on. So start with the least intrusive budget from there. And then like the next month, try to save 5%. Next month after that, try to save 5%.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good starting point for some people. And I'm glad we got to touch on that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today about all of this.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I feel like some people are going to get a lot of value from this conversation. Would you please share any If you have anything additional to say, please share it about your programs. If we did miss anything, but otherwise just tell everybody where they can find you and reach out if they have more questions, or if they want to learn more about working with you and what you do.
Absolutely. So you can always go to the blog, don'twastethecrumbs.com. We have new content up there. Oh my gosh, many of the days of the week. The program Grocery Budget Bootcamp, we're going to put a link below, I believe, right, in the show notes.
Yes.
You can learn more about that. And then you can connect with me on Instagram, and I'm Don't Waste the Crumbs there as well. I love hearing from my readers. I love, love, love. I'm not the blogger who puts something up and then ignores everybody. I actually want to hear the feedback. So please reach out if you have questions or are struggling with something and you just need, you need like a 2-minute, can you just get me unstuck type of message? I would love to help.
Okay, great. Yeah. And like you said, we're going to link everything up, how everyone can reach out to you in the show notes. And thank you again. And hopefully we'll get to chat another time.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Hey, thanks for watching the episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment and share it with a friend who really needs to hear it. Because when you share this information, you're also going to help other people level up their health. And if you or somebody else you know wants to work on their health and they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, feel free to reach out to me to apply to work together. Thanks for watching and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.